Welcome to this video on academic integrity, designed to give you the tools and help you feel more confident producing high-quality academic work. Here's what this video will cover. Being part of the academic community, what this means, how this potentially differs from your previous experiences, and how finding your critical voice is key. Then we'll look at forming your critical voice, understanding what it means to be critical in an academic context, how taking critical and clear notes from authors and other sources can support your critical arguments. And then finally, we'll look at using these notes effectively in your written work, what this means in terms of paraphrasing and quotations, and what this doesn't mean and how to avoid plagiarizing the ideas of others. Let's start with being part of an academic community. Studying at university level is often referred to being part of an academic community. But what does this actually mean? Take a moment now to think about and note down what being part of an academic community means to you. So what does this actually mean? Well, as students, you are already part of an academic community. This can mean multiple things: the community in your institution, the community in your field of study, and the wider academic community of all students and academics across the globe. And as such, it is essential that you make yourself familiar with the conventions of academic writing. Every member of the academic community, staff and student alike, is expected to follow these academic conventions in any piece of work they produce. In academic writing, referencing is one of these conventions. So therefore, key to being part of the academic community is ethical integrity. All research is part of the academic conversation in our subject area. By academic conversation, we mean what the research in our subject area has said in the past, is saying right now, and will say in the future. This conversation should never be one-sided. In other words, if you are to be part of the academic community, you need to be prepared to get into the conversation. You cannot just defer to what others have said. Therefore, the integration and evaluation of the research that has come before or is ongoing in our subject area into our own work is necessary and expected. But doing this ethically and correctly is essential if we wish to stay part of the academic community. Writing at university may be very different to your previous experiences. In the academic writing community you are now a part of, we thoroughly research a topic before beginning the writing process, and then begin to incorporate this research into our own thoughts, ideas, and analysis. Key to this is that the writing is your piece of work. It is not a review of what other people have said on the topic, but it is your argument, supported by the evidence and authors that both agree and disagree with your position. Effective academic writing is therefore about finding your critical voice, being a critical thinker, and developing your critical arguments. But what does this actually mean? Take a moment to think about and note down what you think the term critical voice refers to. And how do you find your critical voice when so much has already been written and researched in your subject area already? There are multiple debates out there on the potential elements of critical thinking. The following is one potential example which uses the definitions we've just looked at to create a model for you to use in your own thinking. So critical thinking requires argument analysis, recognizing fallacies in our sources of information or when there is bias over fact, investigation, understanding the context, deciding if a source convincingly justifies its argument, imagination, the ability to apply different perspectives to what we are reading and think about potential consequences, and radical questioning, letting go of our own views, being willing to accept change and see the connections to the bigger picture. Academic writing without criticality equals our writing makes assumptions of cause and effect. We focus on what feels true to us, i.e., what matches our own preconceived notions of the world. We focus on finding a simple answer rather than negotiating the complexity of a position to help us understand the world. And our writing ends up highly descriptive. Let's look at an example. The following is from a film history course looking at slapstick humour. Do not worry if this is not your subject area. We are simply reviewing the way the person has written. We do not need to understand what they are writing about. Pause the video here and read through this paragraph now. What did you think? Well, it's very descriptive. There is little use of supporting evidence. It makes assumptions. Therefore, there is no evidence of this student getting into the academic conversation in this subject area. The student's critical voice is almost entirely missing. We do not know anything that the student would like to argue. Let's pause the video again and read through this paragraph now. What did you think of this one? The student avoids making assumptions and instead supports the arguments that they are making. The supporting evidence is all used carefully and there is a good variety of sources used. Therefore, there is clear evidence that this student has engaged in the academic conversations in this subject area. The student's critical voice is much more present. It is far more clear to the reader what the student would like to argue. Let's turn now to critical reading and note-taking. Now we've thought about critical voice, what does that mean for the reading we're doing and the notes that we're taking? How have you been taking notes so far? Given what we know now about your critical voice, note down a few things that you think about the notes you've taken so far or what you think good notes contain. Why not pause the video now while you do this? Okay, done that? Great. Now here are some questions we think you should be asking of your own notes. See if they match what you noted down. Are they clear, easy to read? Do they contain a summary? How easy is it to find the key arguments? Is it clear if you've noted down a quotation? Can you use them for your revision or do you need to go back to the original source? If you need to go back to the original source, how easy is this? i.e., have you clearly made a note of the reference details for this source? If we break it down to the very basics, effective notes will contain the following: what the author's argument is, how and why this is relevant or not, in other words, your critical analysis, and what you think about that argument, and that's it. Pages and pages of notes on one chapter, article, etc. are completely pointless. Ideally, you should be trying to keep your notes as brief as possible, focusing on incorporating relevant parts of the 4 elements of critical thinking into your analysis as we discussed earlier, and limiting yourself to the equivalent of 1 to 2 sides of A4 paper is a good place to start to avoid returning to making notes that are too long, detailed and irrelevant. Okay, so you've been thinking about your critical voice and working on incorporating this into your note-taking. So how are you going to use these notes in your work? The academic conversations in our subject area require citations. Why? Well, it demonstrates your academic integrity, showing the marker that you have gathered evidence to support your ideas and arguments, used credible, good quality sources, read widely and at an appropriate academic level, and it allows your marker to differentiate between your own work and the work of others and to locate your sources. This returns us to the earlier idea of ethical integrity. If we wish to stay a part of the academic community, we must cite our sources and we must do this correctly. Let's look now at paraphrasing and plagiarism. What do you think of when you think about paraphrasing? Take a moment to note down your ideas. Done that? Great. Well, you may have multiple ideas, but some of the most common are: Paraphrasing is not as good as quoting. If I change one or two words here and there, this is good enough for a paraphrase. There is no way I can word this better than the original authors, so why try? And my lecturer would prefer quotations. What exactly is paraphrasing in academic writing? Well, it is not taking one or two sentences from a text and changing a few words. It is often a summary of a larger piece of work. Paraphrasing allows you to sum up an author's argument in a brief and succinct way. It allows you to show when multiple authors agree on a position simply, without quoting each one. And it also allows you to compare and contrast multiple authors simply, without quoting each one. Most importantly, it demonstrates to the marker that you have a deeper understanding of an argument rather than that you are able to find a good quote. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is when you copy someone else's work or use their ideas in your essays, coursework, thesis, or any other academic work and then do not acknowledge that you have done this. It is an offence to plagiarise and could lead to programme termination. You must acknowledge an idea is not your own, even if you do not quote the person directly. You must list all sources in your cited reference list or bibliography. Now let's look at some examples. Is this paraphrasing or is this plagiarism? Here is the original text. Take a moment to pause the video and read this through. Now let's look at some examples where the original text is paraphrased. What do you think of each one? Do you think any of these would be considered plagiarism? Pause the video and read this example. What do you think, paraphrased or plagiarized? This example has been plagiarized. The student has substituted synonyms for many words in the passage or changed one or two words here and there as highlighted, but has not changed the structure of the text and has used another person's idea without crediting that person for them. Pause again and read this example. What do you think, paraphrased or plagiarized? Again, this is also clearly plagiarized. There is even less change from the original. The words have been moved around a little at the sentence level, and a word has been added or removed here or there, but this is essentially the same as the original text. Now pause again and take a moment to read this example. What do you think, paraphrased or plagiarized? Unfortunately, this is still plagiarism, although this is a pretty good paraphrase of the original text. By not including a citation, this would still suggest to the marker that you are presenting these ideas as your own when they are not. Let's look at the next example. Is this paraphrased or plagiarized? Well, as we can see, this is the same as the previous slide. It is a good paraphrase of the original source, where the original text has been reduced and summarized into the student's own words, but crucially, the student has cited the source of the ideas appropriately to make it clear that this is not their own argument. Any type of paraphrasing or quoting will need to acknowledge the source you obtained the information from. You must acknowledge that the words you are using are not your own. This is generally done with an in-text citation. Note, if you do not include an acknowledgement or this is incorrect, then this is plagiarism. Most importantly, if you are not sure how your in-text citations should look on your course, please ask your tutor and look through the guidance you were given at the start of the course. That was just a small example, but hopefully you can now see more clearly why paraphrasing carefully is not only important, but how it can potentially enhance your work, allowing you space to bring in more examples and arguments from various sources, thus demonstrating that you are fully immersed in the academic conversation in your subject area. So to paraphrase effectively, try these steps. Read the text carefully and make sure you understand it well. Use good techniques in your note-taking. Work on summarizing as much as possible. Then put the text away. It is very hard to paraphrase a text while still looking at it. Use your notes to write the ideas in your own words. Don't try to paraphrase word for word or sentence by sentence. Take a more holistic approach to the text argument as a whole. Finally, check your paraphrase against the original text to make sure you have not changed the original meaning and you have paraphrased thoroughly enough. And don't forget to acknowledge with a citation. Let's sum up what we've looked at today. You are part of the academic community. This means you must demonstrate integrity in your writing and acknowledge where the ideas have come from. It is important to form your own critical voice. Taking critical and clear notes from authors and other sources can support your critical arguments. And using these notes effectively in your written work will result in stronger pieces of work. Paraphrasing effectively can support it, but we must avoid plagiarizing the ideas of others. Thank you for listening.